Well, China is slowly following through on its promise to open up its vast economy to the world by easing foreign investment limits on a range of industries, from banking to agriculture. The announcement comes 1 week before potentially damaging US tariffs on billions of dollars worth of Chinese imports, which are due to come into effect. Patrick Fock has more from Hong Kong.
Well, China's key trading partners have complained all along that Chinese companies are free to come and invest in their markets, and yet foreign firms are limited from entering the world's second largest economy. And China's also been criticized for continuing to say that it's going to open up its market and bring about reform, but rarely has it offered any concrete timeline. So this is a significant development in that sense, particularly so perhaps for the financial services sector, where for the first time we're seeing foreign companies being allowed to have majority ownership in brokerages and insurance companies, and caps being lifted on foreign ownership of Chinese banks as well. So we're likely to see a significant investment in these areas. And one has to question whether or not the measures that are being taken by the US against China are having some effect. One would imagine that they are, and that Beijing doesn't want these trade tensions to escalate any further, particularly if it means that it's going to have an impact on China's ambitions to become a tech powerhouse. But certainly officials in the US are going to want to see how this is all being implemented. And at the same time, there is still quite a lot of skepticism about this development because there are a lot of analysts that say that, okay, China is opening up more space in the market for people to come in, but there is still a long list of things that you aren't allowed to do.
Well, for more on this story, I'm joined by TRT World's editor-at-large, Craig Capitas, in Paris. Craig, good to have you back. Firstly, we know Donald Trump has often criticised China for shutting out foreign companies from large swathes of its economy. So is China's latest announcement about opening up, is it basically an acknowledgement of those criticisms?
I think it's a masquerade. Look, there's a fundamental contrast of how China and America views the world, and this ZTE is a consequence of that competing vision. ZTE is the poster child for China 2025, the One Belt, One Road initiative. And right now, China is pretty much in a feedback loop. It imports more than 90% of its semiconductor components, and 25 to 30% of the components that go into ZTE's things, they come from the United States. So the Chinese have to try to make nice with America on this, but I don't think it's going to work, because one of the things they had to do was change the board. So they got rid of the old chairman and they brought in a guy called Li Zhihu, if I'm pronouncing it correctly, as the new chairman of ZTE. Well, Mr. Li is the former Communist Party secretary at China Aerospace, which is the largest state-owned shareholder of ZTE's parent company. So again, it always comes back to the point: is do you trust do you trust the Chinese? Do you trust their corporate structure when all of it is managed by the government?
Yes, and these trade tariffs against China are on some $50 billion worth of its imports. They're due to come into effect next Friday, and as a part of the opening up of foreign investment, China has scrapped or reduced tariffs from imports coming from its Asian neighbours. Is this an acknowledgement from China that it will be badly hurt by the US tariffs, and so it's gearing up for alliances closer to home?
China will be hurt, but again, I think it's, if you look at the US and China, China can survive it. I don't think the US can, because the Chinese can frame this as a long struggle, another long march against the Americans, that they have to come out on top. The problem the Chinese have with ZTE is such an important issue in this. They have 75,000 employees around the world, and a lot of them aren't Chinese. It's the #4 maker of telecom gear in the world. And ZTE and the Chinese realize that the so-called Chinese tech boom, it's built on the back of American technology. According to Donald Trump and a lot of other observers, that intellectual property was illegally acquired. So I don't understand how the Chinese and the Americans are going to get together to untie this Gordian knot they created in trade negotiations. I think the sanctions, the tariffs will come through next week. Trump has too much blowback in Congress. There's a lot of congressmen who do not like allowing ZTE to come back into the States, regardless of the fine they paid.
And Craig, let's go to another trade battle on another front. And Canada has just come out swinging in response to Donald Trump's tariffs on its steel and aluminium products. Let's have a listen.
Following extensive consultations with Canadians, today we are publishing our two final tariff lists. One list that will be subject to a 25% tariff, and a second list that will be subject to a 10% tariff. The idea that Canada might constitute a threat to American national security, the legal pretext invoked by our neighbors to impose these tariffs on Canadian steel and aluminum exports, is not only absurd, it's hurtful.
So Canada striking back there. Was there really another course of action for Canada in this trade battle?
They had to do it. At the end of the day, Canada is not a national security threat to the United States. It's Trump playing politics once again.
That's right, and I'm sure we'll see likely retaliatory measures elsewhere. Craig Capitas in Paris, thank you.